show. Step off.
It's time for the main event.
Hey, what is up? Welcome back to the program, folks. Thank you for tuning in. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tom Clark, and this is the one and only, back again, Tom Clark's Main Event. What's up, kids? Welcome back to the program. It's a much more subdued Tom Clark than you're used to. You're used to spastic, can't stop moving, stuff's jingling on his wrists and fingers. You'll get a little bit of that today, but maybe not a whole lot. If you're a pro wrestling fan, you know what's happened this week. Very, very tragic news. We're going to get to it here in short order. First of all, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you don't know who I am, I'm Tom. What's up? The main event's been going strong since 2014. And we're glad to have you here with us. This is episode actually 319. Let's get that ticker ticking and tell all the good people out there who we are and where you can find us on socials, where you can find the podcast. Thank you for tuning in. While you're here, if you will, please smash the like button. That would mean loads to me. It puts no money in my pocket, but gives me a warm, fuzzy feeling inside. So if you can just smash the like button for me and do something else for me, share this on your feed. If you have friends that are pro wrestling fans and they want to hang out and talk about Bray Wyatt, then now's the time to do so. We welcome them. We are glad you're here with us. We appreciate everybody coming back. If you're a regular Tom Clark's Main Event attendee, thank you so much for hanging out with us as always. And if you are brand new to the show, welcome. We hope this is not the first or not the last time you'll be here with us. We're here most every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So there you go. Again, glad you're here with us. Please smash the like button. I'm probably going to ask you to do that a whole bunch. You'll get sick of hearing me say it. Let's go ahead and get to the comments, see who was first at the table before we bring on our guest today. Robbie, good to see you, my friend. Guten Tag, Sandy in Germany. Sugar Shane, what's going on, dude? Ray all day, good to see you. Paul from Scotland. Hello, Paul in Scotland. How you doing, my friend? Good to see you. Charlotte Russell, good to see you. I totally agree. Jason, what's up, my friend? Montrese, my dear, so good to see you here today. Jamel in Vegas, great to see you. Let's see. Charles Hinkle, we appreciate you, my friend. Thomas McCann. Brother, I know what it means to stay busy, so I appreciate you very much so. Thanks for hanging out. Alex in Blackpool, what's up, my friend? Hey, brother, have a great time this weekend. We're going to talk a little bit about it. Alex, are you from the Untitled Wrestling Podcast audience? If you are, welcome. And by the way, if you don't know, Jay Luft and I, along with Joseph Higgins from Damn It Vince and Hallmark of Greatness, are doing a Ted Lasso podcast. It's called Two Nations Under Ted. We're on all the major platforms. Go check us out. Subscribe today, if you will, and on all the socials at Two Nations Pod. So we appreciate you. Wes, good to see you, my friend. We appreciate everybody being here. Again, kids, if you will, smash the like button for me. Apologies if we look a little different. I've moved to another side of the office to get better sound. Mission accomplished. However, my lighting needs a little bit of work. We're going to work on it. I actually had to turn off my overhead lights because it was just blaring down on me like I'm on center stage at a Rolling Stones concert. I can play the bass, but maybe not that well. I'm just saying. All right, kids, we appreciate you. We're going to bring on now our special guest. If you will please welcome back to the show, good friend of the show, let's try it again, Mr. Christopher Ray Patton, CRP as I call him. Chris, how you doing, my friend? Thanks for coming on today.
I'm doing great, man. It's been a little bit of a rough week as a wrestling fan, but outside of that, doing well. How about you, buddy? How you been?
Brother, I'm hanging in there. We're doing what we do, right? Staying busy all the time. And brother, you're right about what you said. It's been a heck of a time. I mean, in one calendar year, it's hard to imagine. In one calendar year, we lost Jay Briscoe, Adrian Street, Terry Funk, and now Bray Wyatt. It is mind-blowing. I mean, if you really think about it, dude, the pro wrestling industry compared to other industries is really, in terms of bodies, maybe not that big. Like, in other words, like retail industry or another professional sport. So, I mean, when people pass this many at one time, it really feels like what is happening out there. You know what I mean? It's crazy.
Yeah, and wrestling kind of has that special connection with its audience, anyways, where they seem to almost hurt a lot worse than other type celebrity deaths, or at least that's how I've always felt about it. There's that raw emotion that comes with watching professional wrestling, especially if you've been watching it for a long time.
Absolutely. And there's more of a connection. These guys and gals are more accessible. I mean, it's, people that travel the world and main events sold out stadiums in other countries suddenly are in your hometown and they're literally 500 feet away. Like, how many times do you have access to Brad Pitt 500 feet away, or Tom Cruise? It really doesn't happen. So, I mean, that's a great point, dude. Great point. They are a little bit more accessible. We're going to kick off today's show with Bray Wyatt. And kids, guess what? Unless you're disrespectful or you curse a whole bunch, nothing's out of bounds today when it comes to memories, thoughts, condolences if you want to pass them on, any good vibes you want to send out to the Wyatt family or to the Rotunda family. Let's be clear. Please use this as a platform. We appreciate you again hanging out with us, and let's get some good vibes in here, man. I would suspect that Windham would want that from fans, from his fans, from fans in general. He loved this business. What in terms of the Bray Wyatt character, when we first saw this, Chris, as we know, he started off his career at WWE as Husky Harris. Some people would call that a highly regrettable character, but dude, I don't know if we knew it then. We probably didn't, but you look in his eyes and you're like, there's something there, man. Do you know what I'm saying? Couldn't you just see it from a long distance away that this guy's got, you know what I mean? He's got a look. There's something there in his eyes that leads you to believe there's something going on up here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's been a long time since I watched any of that Husky Harris stuff, but I remember him kind of being one of the standouts of that group, even back then. A lot of it is that facial expression and emotion, like kind of the Jake the Snake stare, almost. Something like you said, something going on behind the eyes.
Yeah, great point. Great point. And we have to mention his father, Hall of Famer Mike Rotunda, and his grandfather, Blackjack Mulligan. Your grandfather is Blackjack Mulligan, brother. Your uncle is Barry Windham. Like, it's that pedigree, Chris, is just. I'm not going to say, well, of course he was going to make it. No, not necessarily. There's Scott Putskys out there in the world. All due respect to Scott Putsky, who may have become something great in another industry, but in pro wrestling it didn't work out. So it's not a guarantee you're going to make it. But dude, the metamorphosis from Husky Harris to Bray Wyatt is, I mean, this guy truly found himself. And, honestly, there's something to be said for, he goes to NXT, he transforms himself, and almost the entire character came from him. I don't think that WWE really had a lot of input creatively. I think that he told them what he wanted to do and they let him run with it. I mean, that's a stroke of brilliance, right? That's a sign of a guy that not only gets it, but understands what he wants to do and makes it happen.
Yeah. And it was a very cool character, something that we hadn't seen as far as like the cult family type character since maybe Raven in ECW. And it was definitely a different take on, kind of what Raven was doing, more of a Southern type take on it. And it was just so cool. And, the whole Eater of Worlds gimmick with the original Wyatt family, I really, really dug. He's one of my wife's favorite pro wrestlers of all time. She just loves that character. She's more into the bigger characters than like highly athletic wrestling matches. So she obviously was really broken up. But yeah, man, it was just such a cool idea. And growing up being such a big Raven fan, seeing that character kind of taken into a different direction with a different style of family was very neat, especially on WWE TV, because the time he came in, things were kind of stale. I mean, you kind of get the start of Punk's pipe bomb, start of that. You get Jericho back, but outside of that, there wasn't a whole lot going on. I mean, it was a long time of watching John Cena just run over people. So It was really cool to see a fresh new character.
And I've told this story before, probably ad nauseum for some folks, I don't know. But when I was with Bleacher, I think I wrote for I think it was legitimately 2.5 to 3 straight years of John and Randy, John and Randy, John and Randy. John was Raw, Randy was SmackDown, and then they might flip. But it was every week it was the John and Randy show. All due respect to John and Randy, but after a while, that got to be, God, is this all they're going to do? There's no one else. So when Punk came up, made a name for himself, rightfully so, the Shield comes in, the Wyatt family comes in, things get turned upside down. All of a sudden, it's like, this is starting to get fun again for me. So I know what you're talking about. Dude, talk about the I want to get to the Shield bit in a second, but the dynamic of the Wyatt family. I mean, it started off with Luke Harper, we know as of course, Brody Lee, Mr. Brody Lee, who has passed as well. Eric Rowan, who is now, I think, going by Eric the Red. The trio of the guys before Braun came into the mix. But dude, those guys as a trio, the presence they had, the stage presence, the presence on the mic, the entire presentation. I don't think you can ever duplicate this. You can try, but I don't think you're going to come close to the magic those three guys had together.
It would be really, really tough, right? I mean, with their size and how good they were in the ring, I mean, it was almost like you had like a Steiner's Brothers type tag team, and then if you get past them, you have to deal with this evil Bray Wyatt character. So yeah, I mean, it would be very, very hard to duplicate. You kind of see it now. I'm not going to say that Malachi Black's group is the exact same thing, but they're going for a similar vibe, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not the same.
It's not the same. It's not the same. Robbie,
I mean, all three of those guys were talented.
Oh, they were 100%. Together, they were, I'd say unstoppable, but we know the most powerful weapon in a pro wrestling company is the pencil. It's the eraser. So, I mean, it's not they were unstoppable. You know what I mean? Because there were moments where you're like, and then that suddenly something weird would happen. Oh, this is WWE. That's right. But to their credit, they did give these guys the ball with the Shield rivalry quite a bit and let them run with it. Robbie with an interesting point. The comparisons to Undertaker had to happen. There's just no way. And like you said about Bray as a cult figure, I mean, Waylon Mercy, who I think was Steve Kern back in the day, wasn't it Steve Kern that was Waylon Mercy, or was somebody else?
Oh man, you struck me. I think it was Steve Kern, but I could be wrong.
Because I think Dan Spivey was Skinner, right? Wasn't Dan Spivey Skinner?
Yes.
Okay.
So
yeah.
The Waylon Mercy character though was really just those couple of promos. Like we never really got as much out of it as Bray Wyatt, but it was it was definitely a take on that in Raven for sure. But yeah, it spun in its own very unique style.
Yeah, for sure. I got to see the Shield versus the Wyatts in Charlotte. I think it was just a Raw. I don't think it was a pay-per-view. I don't think so. But the Shield versus the Wyatt family is going to go down, at least for that company, one of the all-time greatest rivalries of all time. I mean, you'd have to say. Dude, what about the way the Shield matched up with the Wyatt family and how well that worked, man? You talk about capturing lightning in a bottle. That's the definition of it, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that was how long that feud lasted for, what, like 6 months?
Yeah, a long time.
It was a long time, and there were some good matches in there. The Shield in general, like it's not very often you're going to get like two factions that are that good with those great of athletes in it. Like normally you're not going to, I mean, we see this in New Japan and in AEW, even to some extent. It's not every day that you're going to have that level of talent in a group together feuding with each other. It's a hard thing to get. It is.
And dude, look at the Shield. All three guys went on to lead two different companies. It's nuts, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, Roman right now, probably, I mean, he's been at the top of the mountain for 2.5 years. And the reason that SmackDown is doing so well in the ratings and that whole storyline that he has going with Paul, I mean, God, it's all those guys were just so incredible. I mean, you know, even going further down that path, Bray, when he changes to the Fiend, even though that I was not the biggest fan of that, more of how they booked him, specifically with some of the matches and stuff. But that there's no denying how huge that character was, and he was right back to the top of the mountain. I mean, all of those guys have taken their time at the top, whether in AEW or WWE. So it says a lot about that talent pool that came out of FCW, and I guess it was technically the beginning of NXT.
Very good point. Yeah, and honestly, I like the aesthetic of the Fiend. I love the way he looked. That was where it ended, and it was through no fault of Bray's, but it just, yeah, it fell flat with me. And I don't say anything out of disrespect to the guy or anything like that, but for me personally, I was like, I don't hate it. And I liked it for a long time, but then it became, like you said, the booking became, I don't know why we're doing that. I mean, and the comparison to the Undertaker is valid, because again, the supernatural, you got those vibes happening. He and Taker matched up really well together. I'll be honest with you, Chris, I don't think they went to that well enough. I think, didn't they just have the one match and it was over? That was kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, and I would almost say that they had that match too soon, because it was a WrestleMania match, and usually you have to be there for quite a while to get that big WrestleMania moment with Undertaker. And nothing against Bray at the time period. I think that he was doing great work with everything he had going on with the Wyatt family. I think that was just too soon to pull the trigger on the Mania match.
Yeah.
If they wanted to do some other stuff with Taker to build up that story, I think that would have been a good way to go. But yeah, they didn't really go to that well too often. But they did tons of other supernatural stuff with Bray. The Fiend stuff, what really killed it for me was when they pulled in Alexa Bliss and specifically that Hell in a Cell match with Seth Rollins. Because after that match, it's like, and then they have him lose to Goldberg, right? They kind of killed the gimmick before it ever got, I think, reached its full potential. And that's part of why I was excited to see him come back, and he kind of had a different take on it. And then they put him in the Mountain Dew blackout match. Like I said, a lot of it, I think, has more to do with how they were booking some of these matches and what they were asking the guy to do, not the talent itself. Because we know the talent's there, especially when you hear Bray cut one of those great promos that he was able to do. And
oh yeah,
he moved great in the ring too. So
I'm so glad you said that, because look, I'm not just saying this today because of what this day is, but I'll be honest with you, I got a little sick and tired of every time I turned around, people said, well, Bray's character's great, but his wrestling's just like politics, brother. You get one tagline and everybody repeats the same talking point. People who know nothing about how the actual psychology of a wrestling match works, how two guys actually communicate and set it up beforehand, are saying Bray can't work. The same people that said John Cena couldn't work, and I'll never understand that. John Cena could put on a 5-star match, but they didn't want that from him. I don't know why that's so hard for people to get their heads around. They didn't need or want John Cena to be Bryan Danielson. They didn't need or want that from him. They wanted him to be the rough house, the brawler, so that's what he gave them. Bray could work just fine. I'll never understand, Chris, this need we have to say he's a great character, but it's almost like you're complimenting him and then cutting him down at the same time.
Yeah, any of the complaints that I normally had about Bray Wyatt is that he wasn't dastardly enough for what that character was, but that had nothing to do with his actual in-ring ability. That's more of like, I want him to do stuff that Jake the Snake would do, right? Like throw a cobra at a guy, or that was always more of my thing with some of his in-ring stuff. But, Jericho put out a good post on Instagram yesterday that was followed by the Hell in a Cell with him jumping off and Bray catching him, and him basically saying, thanks for taking care of me, big guy. So, if Jericho's out here putting over your in-ring ability, who are, normal wrestling fans to say anything about what this guy could do in the ring, right?
And by the way, I'm getting a little, now that we're here, I'm getting a little tired of people crapping on Chris Jericho, but I'll save that. I'll save it. Yeah. It's just, again, Chris, it's talking points that one person gets or one website writes, and then 4,000 people repeat it verbatim because they think it's popular or it's smart sounding. I just don't understand it. Doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, the other thing is with The Fiend, they wanted him to wrestle like an Undertaker or Kane, and Bray Wyatt is not an Undertaker or Kane. So if they're specifically talking about The Fiend, they were trying to create a big man gimmick like Kane or The Undertaker, and Bray Wyatt is not that guy. He's more like more in line with like a Kevin Owens as far as how he moves around the ring. And then they gave him a gimmick where he's basically unkillable. So it's kind of it's a hard ask.
Yeah. It is. It's hard to come back from that. It's yeah. How do you how do you follow that? I don't get that either. Well, I'll tell you, I I hate this for his family. You know, we said earlier how accessible pro wrestlers are compared to other forms of entertainment, other stars and other industries. They truly are. But man, he leaves behind a wife and kids. I mean, this, 36 years old, he's lived, but he's still a lot of time left. So it is a shame to see it, man. Um, hate that for his family. Hate that for his friends and fans. And I'll tell you, man, at the end of the day, he truly loved this business. And what's cool about it, if nothing else, you can say that he's maybe not the only guy, but he's one of the few guys who basically, I guess, laid out his plans to Vince and said, "This is what I want to do." Like, we know Punk was able to do that. We know John can call his own shots. But how many other people besides maybe Randy and Roman can you honestly say sort of laid out his own plan? Like, dude, I'm so happy that he actually got to be one of those guys, because the dude was so crazy creative, man. It was nuts.
Yeah, you're dead on as far as people pitching Vince ideas. There's very few that he thinks are good enough to run with in the way that he ran with a lot of that Bray Wyatt stuff. Unfortunately for Bray and the Fiend, I think Vince liked it a little bit too much and started tweaking a lot of what was what it could have been.
I totally agree with that. Well, kids, we could spend an hour on Bray, and I would actually love to do that at some point. By the way, I'm not saying this because I'm plugging my other show, but just so you know, Tom Clark 6M podcast, my other podcast, 2 of 3, we actually covered the Wyatt family. And if you'll bear with me, I'll let you know where you can find that. We're all over the place, kids. All 3 shows are all over the place if you're so inclined to check it out. And again, it really puts no money in my pocket. But if you'd like to hear our take on the Wyatt family, you're more than welcome to go check it out. And again, if you'll be patient, I'll find it here. We're on YouTube, of course, as we are several other podcast platforms. We don't number the 6M. We do, but they're not in the title of the episodes because I like these things to be evergreen for the most part. You can just watch whenever you want to, but it is on the playlist on YouTube. So if you'd like to go check it out, please feel free to. And of course, keep in mind, this was done a while back, probably 2-3 years ago, probably, I would say. And I think it's Phil Lindsay and I that did that episode. Shout out to Phil, by the way. 2 years ago, the Wyatt family episode aired. So again, if you want to check out Tom Clark 6M podcast, please feel free. Of course, it is much appreciated. Let's talk a little bit about Terry Funk here, Chris. This is a guy that yours truly grew up watching. He was, of course, you know what, to be honest, a lot of people can say that because, right?
If it doesn't matter if you started watching wrestling in the 70s, the 80s, or the 90s, hey, maybe even in the 2000s, you know who Terry Funk is, and you probably grew up watching him in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
Which is insane. There's very few wrestlers you can say that about. I guess Flair and Funk, who are pretty much, I mean, they're on my Mount Rushmore of favorite and best wrestlers of all time.
Oh,
so it is crazy to think about. I was listening to an interview with Fumi, and he brought up that point. He's like, I think everyone has their own childhood version of Terry Funk, depending on when you started watching wrestling.
Mine was him and Flair when he tried to pile drive Flair through a table that's not meant to put a wrestler through. I remember at ringside, and the table just kind of fell over. And I'm like, even then he started doing a taste of that hardcore stuff. And at the time it was shocking because those kind of spots just didn't happen, man, ever. Crazy.
Yeah, I've heard Jim Ross talk about it and say how terrified he was because he said, I think that Flair was terrified as well. Like that wasn't Flair selling, that was Flair being really worried that something bad was going to happen because you weren't really seeing table spots when they did that. And it set up a great angle that they ran with. You get great promos from both Flair and Funk. I just rewatched a lot of that feud leading up to that I Quit match, which is still up there as one of the greatest matches of all time between Flair and Funk. And if you've never seen it, I highly recommend you go out there and see it. For people out there watching in the YouTube's and Facebook land. But yeah, it's I've never seen two guys chop and just underhand chop, overhead chop. They do this guardrail spot that I absolutely love that I haven't seen anyone else do since then, where Terry goes to throw Flair into the guardrail. Flair reverses it. Terry hits the guardrail, and then Flair chops him so hard he goes kind of over the guardrail, like he's going to flip over. But Flair grabs his leg and pulls him back down and chops him again. And Terry takes this huge bump over into the crowd. It's just little stuff like that. And yeah, great.
I remember that. I remember that spot. I can visually remember that spot. That's really good stuff. Yeah, he and Flair had such chemistry, and I just remember him in the tux in the ring. And I'm sorry I asked you for a match. Doggone it, let's just shake, and then bam, he forearms him and puts him down. So, Ray just mentioned Funk and Sabu. We cannot forget to mention here, Chris, that when 60s, 70s, you're talking about NWA World Heavyweight Champion Terry Funk. I mean, before Flair had it. I mean, NWA World Heavyweight Champion. When that, not that the title doesn't mean anything now. You could argue that because of people who hold it at the moment. I'm just saying, low-key shade is what we call that, Chris. But at that time, it was legitimately the most important title in the entire world at that point. All due respect to the Japanese promotions, there was nothing bigger than NWA World Heavyweight Championship, and Terry had it. So then you segue to the 80s with Flair. Then you segue to the 90s and the early 2000s with ECW. I mean, dude, the transformation this guy had. Talk about his time in ECW and how did it work? Why did it work with him in that company, you think?
I mean, he had a lot of respect coming from hardcore wrestling in Japan, and I think that's, a big part of it. But he was also the biggest name that ECW could get, and someone that Paul could rely on, and who was willing to do those kind of matches with Sabu, who he had great matches with. But I think the biggest thing is just pretty much wrestling fans from across the world had a very big respect, regardless of what we've been talking about. When you started watching wrestling, there's just massive respect for how good Terry Funk was. Even at that age, you knew that he was going to go out there and give the very best performance he could, whether there was 10 people in the crowd or 10,000 people in the crowd. And I think all the wrestlers that have been talking about him have kind of said the same thing. But if you ever watch Terry Funk match, even if you watch some of the terrible, like I was just talking about last week on the podcast, a match he had with Norman Smiley with Rufus in his corner in WCW 2000. Ooh. And they have a great match. It's just the craziest thing on even though that was, that should have been just a throwaway garbage WCW match, he still made it good. But yeah, he means pretty much everything to ECW. I don't know that company stays around as long as it does if they weren't able to build on the back of Terry Funk and have Terry Funk come in and get a lot of those guys over, which, people could say what they will about Chris Jericho, but that's kind of the reason AEW brought in Chris Jericho, is to try to achieve that same thing.
That's very true. That's a good point. Yeah. And I think Heyman would agree with you that there would have been no ECW without Terry Funk. And I remember the quote that Heyman had about Funk where, at the time when some veterans were clinging to their spots and unwilling to not only not work with young talent, but even put them over, just didn't want anything to do with it. Terry Funk looked at the ECW locker room and said, "Oh, I can make him. I can make him. I know I can make him," and looked at it as an opportunity. And look, dude, the most complimentary thing I believe you can say about a guy in the business is he's unselfish. Number one, he's never hurt anybody. Number two, he's unselfish. And dude, if you have a guy like that guy likely gets booked everywhere and has made friends in a business that historically you don't get to make a lot of friends in. So, I mean, if Terry Funk ever rubbed anybody the wrong way and made an enemy, I've never heard about it. He seemed to be a guy everybody loved.
Yeah, I've never heard a wrestler say anything bad about Terry Funk, that's hard to say in the wrestling business, especially during that time period where everyone talked bad about everyone in some form or fashion.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's see. Shane's an old school fan, had the best promos from the Double Cross Ranch, and who can forget the movie Roadhouse. Thank you, Shane, for bringing up his acting career. Dude, when you make friends with Sylvester Stallone tends to not forget about you. So, I mean, he and Funk supposedly were pretty buddy for a while. I'm sure I don't know if they still were or not, but, Terry gets into Hollywood And some wrestlers had maybe tried that, but Terry was successful. I mean, you could say Roddy was successful as well. I mean, what is it about Terry in Hollywood that worked? I mean, do you know what I mean? Was it his personality? Was it his charisma? Was it the way you could relate to him physically, maybe, or his facials? What was it that worked for him in Hollywood as well, you think?
I think it has a lot to do. I mean, it's the same kind of vibe, right? Like everyone talks about how Terry could read a room, how he would psych himself up to just being basically like how Stone Cold said in the past, like just his self amplified. And it's like that was the majority of his characters, whether it was an Over the Top or Roadhouse. It is just an amplified, different version of Terry Funk, right? So,
right.
There is. I didn't know this until yesterday, but he is the reason that Hulk Hogan ended up in Rocky 3. That he's the one that put in the call to Sylvester Stallone saying, "Hey, I think you should put him into Rocky 3."
Wow, I don't think I knew that. That's interesting. Yeah, Terry debuted in 1965, and he retired in 2017. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Say no more. Say no more. He never really retired, did he? I mean, honestly.
No, and if you know, who's to say if he doesn't have that hernia surgery that goes awry, whether he would be wrestling in AEW or something right now? But I don't know. He's a very tough man who really, really loved his fans and the wrestling business.
It's true. Very true. In the early 2000s, I was with a company, and we were bringing in Boogeyman Jimmy Valiant, and he was like 70 something, and still worked. Now he didn't take any bumps, but he came out and did his shtick, and the crowd loved him because at that time, early 2000s, you still had some 80s fans around, and he just loved it. He loved doing it. It wasn't about money. We couldn't pay him all that much anyway. It was just because he, and look, there's something to be said for, hey, I got into this when I was 18, so I never went to college. I never learned a trade. I don't have any other skills. This is addictive. I know I'm good at it. I know I can do it. I can do it at any time. It's probably one of the few industries where you don't necessarily need a dress code. You don't need a desk. You don't need skills. You just need to know how to work. You can do it anywhere. You can do it in a parking lot, in a bathroom, doesn't really matter. And it still works. I mean, it's no wonder guys can't walk away, man. But I feel like Terry stayed for the best of all possible reasons. And that was to help other guys, man. That's important. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He lived by the motto, with the old motto of make sure wherever you go is situation than when you got there. And he carried that over from the times in the territory to Japan to, even ECW.
He did. Yeah. Leave the better business than the way leave the business better than the way you found it. I'll get it. Yeah. Championship Wrestling from Florida, All Japan, WWF, of course, International Wrestling Association of Japan. I never even knew that existed. Eastern Championship Wrestling, which of course becomes ECW, WWF again. Let's see, NWA, of course, NWA TNA. He was there. I mean, again, performing all over the world, and his brother Dory, also a legend. Great stuff, man. I mean, Terry's going to be missed as well. It's amazing again to have this much at one time. Shane says, my love for the heel cowboy persona and wrestling started with Terry Funk. And buddy, that's one of those tried and true gimmicks that's going to be run for our great grandkids to enjoy, is the cowboy gimmick. It'll never get old. It's one of those gimmicks that'll always be around because it always works. But man, he did so well, and you could have put him in anything and he would have made it work. But smart, ring smart, talented between the ropes. What is that I Quit match with Flair your favorite Funk match?
Probably. It's definitely the one that I've watched the most. I mean, I grew up watching that on a VHS tape that I watched so much that the thing would barely track with my grandpa as a kid. So I have a very soft spot in my heart for that match. It would either be that or the MT Arena match. And then if I had a third favorite, probably him versus Sabu barbed wire match, because I remember just being so into ECW during that time period.
Yeah, and again, he fit. It made sense for him in that company. I mean, he was Yeah, like we said, man, he helped make that company. There's no doubt about it. I'm sure 100% that Paul Heyman would totally agree with that. Kids, in the 20 or so minutes we're going to have to the top of the hour, we're going to talk a little bit about All In. And we don't want to leave either topic without, again, sending condolences, our best wishes to the friends, family, and fans of Bray Wyatt, also known as Windham Rotunda, of course, and Terry Funk. Again, legends. I mean, would you call Bray a modern day legend? Do you think he'll be remembered in those terms? Hopefully. What do you think?
I think so, just because of his innovation, right? And when you look back at this time period of what WWE was for like the past 10 years, he's definitely was one of the biggest stars. And I wouldn't be surprised if they end up inducting the entire Wyatt family sooner rather than later in their Hall of Fame. And I think that, says a lot about the character. The thing that makes, his passing a little more, I don't want to say sadder, because all passings are sad, but a little more tragic is that we have so much Terry Funk, so much to look back at, whereas we unfortunately just don't for Bray. So that's it's just really sad. And condolences, like you said, to friends and family of both of these great wrestlers.
I meant to tee you up for that, because you made that point off mic before we went live. Excellent point, that we're not going to have the catalog of Bray that we had with Terry. Well said. Unfortunately, well said. Let's talk about All In, kids. So, Chris, there seems to be two divisions of an audience at this point. One division says this is probably the biggest pro wrestling show of all time, and what a feat for a company that didn't exist 4 years ago. And wow, this is great for the business, for all the people in the locker room and for the guys that run the cameras and all the people who earn a living because this company that, again, didn't exist 4 years ago. This is great. And then there's the other part of the audience that says, this is ridiculous. They didn't build it right. It's nonsense. It's crap. They just took a crap all over it. I don't care about it. Tony's he's a money mark. I just don't understand the hate. Where do you come in on this, man? You've always been chill and smart, in my opinion. So, like, what's your take on all this back and forth about All In?
Well, I think I was actually on the show with you when they announced they were doing Wembley, and we kind of talked about it. My only thought about it originally was, are they going to be able to sell that many tickets? Because the place is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a huge building, and, bless them, they were able to do that. They have a lot, a ton of talent. They're bringing in some guys, obviously, from Japan, but like, you can't if you look at that in any negative way for the wrestling business, I don't know what to tell you. You should just stop paying attention to them in general. Just like delete them from your lives if you hate it that much. I get that there's people that dislike things about AEW, and there's things that I dislike about AEW. Same with having things I dislike about WWE. But it is ridiculous for you to want any wrestling company to fail. Do we really want to go back to the days where it was just WWE? Really? I mean,
let me answer that right now and say no. Because not just from an entertainment perspective, but also another stopping point is another opportunity to create talent for veterans to go, for great ideas to come out of, to spawn other things. Like, I don't think we understand that it's like, I feel like it's George Bailey and It's a Wonderful Life. One guy's life touches the lives of so many others. Again, how many great things have come out of AEW that we'll never forget? Like, mind-blowing.
And AEW has forced WWE to get better. Like, just look at the past year and a half in general of where WWE is now in comparison to like 5 or 6 years ago. And how just dull the company was, repeating the same stories with the same people. And now, they're hot. WWE's red hot. And it's because of, in a lot of ways, it's because of AEW and them having to step up their game, having another company in town. So, I mean, you should always want that kind of another competition, another place for people to go, because overall it's going to make wrestling better. Because you don't have one guy just sitting on a mountaintop.
And people, I think, Chris, get too wrapped up in the word competition. To some people, the word competition means we're going to run these other guys out of town. They're not competition in that regard. They're competition in as much as you just said, they've caused WWE to up their game because WWE sees, oh, okay, they're willing to do something and they're trying that. We're going to do that too. We'll try that too, and we're gonna be on our best game because these guys are stepping up. That to me is competition. Like just because Joe's Burgers down the road is across the street from McDonald's, and you think, Joe's Burgers doesn't stand a chance, but Joe's Burgers is the busiest joint in town on Friday night. You know what I'm saying? Now, does that mean they're going to run McDonald's out of town? Well, of course not. It just means that people thoroughly enjoy that restaurant. To me, it's the same thing, man.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I just don't understand why people get caught up in that or why you would want either company to fail. Because at the end of the day, it's just going to hurt the wrestlers if either of these companies go away. Same thing with Impact. Like any of these wrestling companies, you should be trying to look at the good in them. I mean, obviously, if there's something you don't like, then say you don't like it, but you don't have to hate the entire company. There's no way that you hate everything that's in AEW. There's got to be something good that you can pick out of it.
Of course there is. There's got to be something. We're going to talk about the All-In card here, kids. Shane just brought up a point about having a problem with Cole and MJF fighting for the titles and then for the AEW Championship, so another tag team would get a shot. I don't really lose any sleep over that, Shane. I just think that they're planting the seeds of what's going to happen at the end of the main event. Let's just start with the main event, Chris. Let's just cut to the chase here, dude. MJF versus Adam Cole for the AEW World Championship. Who turns on who, and is that even going to happen?
Well, if I had to make a prediction, I would say that the turn is probably happening in the tag match, and then MJF is rolling into the heavyweight title match hurt and dropping the title with Adam Cole turning heel. That's the way they look like they've been setting it up to me, especially on that Go Home show. I do want to give them credit for that. That's one thing AEW generally doesn't do that great is the storylines leading into the pay-per-view. And I think this one actually had a great setup and has set itself up great for a double turn. I don't know that it makes sense to keep MJF heel because people just don't want to boo the guy. It's kind of like the Stone Cold thing at this point. So to me, that makes a lot of sense. And you kind of have a built-in faction for Adam Cole anyways.
Should any of us actually believe that MJF is babyface? Didn't we? Not all of us, but didn't a lot of people kind of fall for this last time they tried it? And then it turns out he was just messing with you. I mean, I don't know, dude. I still don't know if I buy this 100%. They still don't have me hooked with this. Suddenly I like the fans stuff. I mean, what do you think? Do you think that part's actually legit or what?
He doesn't have to like the fans. He needs to get screwed over by Adam Cole and then chase the title, right?
Yeah. That's true.
It's a different type. It's a different take on a babyface, but we've seen it in the past.
You're right. And, like you said, different take, because I was actually thinking about this the other day watching Dynamite. I was thinking, this is not typical heel face kind of stuff. Like Ospreay, for example, is a devil here. In Japan, he's thanking the fans. He's bowing out of respect to his competition, had some great matches in the G1. And then over here, he's a devil. So it's like, I don't know. I've never been the guy that said you don't need heels and faces. The day that's determined is the day the business is done, in my opinion. You have to have right versus wrong. You have to at some level. So we still have that, but there's so many shades of gray right now in that company. And I'm not suggesting that's a bad thing. Do you think that works for them versus WWE where there's sort of anything can happen at any time?
I think, a lot of the core fan base for AEW is really there for match quality. So it probably works a little better for them than it would for, WWE if everyone was doing shades of gray, which they've done in the past as well. But
true.
The MJF and Adam Cole thing has just from the very start, just because of the way Adam Cole's been acting and the group hanging around, it's always felt like it was going to be a double turn to me.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, for real. I mean, do you think that we're looking at Adam Cole with Roddy Strong with the Kingdom as a faction at that point, like together?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that will be the case. And then, now you have the story of MJ. You have a reason to want to cheer for MJF and for MJF to come off as a babyface, because he gets to see the fans get behind him as this group is just dismantling him on his chase back up towards the title.
I mean, anything could happen. I was going to say, I don't think I'll be surprised at no matter what road they take. That may not entirely be true. There may be something that they do that's got us all. You know what I love? I love that I'm the age that I am, and I can still have that expression at a wrestling show. And even though I like to tell people, "Oh, I'm nonsense," if I'm invested, they'll suck me in, and I'll be there. I just love it. The day I don't have that's the day I'm no longer a fan, because they can still get me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what makes wrestling great. Like, not everything is going to make you're not going to feel that way about everything, but for like the 10-15 seconds that you're able to suspend that disbelief and go back to the first time you saw wrestling as a kid, it's magic, man.
It's true.
It's just a great feeling. So when they're able to get that little bit of hook in you where you're like, I really don't know what's going to happen, it's great. It's a great feeling.
It is. I've always said I don't need to know how the sausage is made. I don't need to know how the magician does his trick. I like sausage, and I can enjoy magic if it's done right. I don't need to know what happens on the last page of the book. I like the journey to the destination. That's what I like. So I just want to take the journey. I want to be so sucked in I forget. And it's hard. You know this. If you study the business that much, if you've ever been involved with it at all on any level, it's hard to not watch a match and you know what move's coming next. It's difficult. But like you said, you get sucked in. It reminds you of when you were a kid, and it's the best thing ever. This card at this point, Chris, has 11 matches. As we said, we kind of suspect that the tag team match earlier in the show against Aussie Open. Can we give Mark Davis and Kyle Fletcher some well-deserved flowers for being a hellacious tag team? And no, that's not a curse word. Everybody calm down. No quarter in the swear jar today. I love these guys, man. I love them so much. I think we're not talking enough about how great this team is.
Yeah, I mean, they're incredible. Hopefully AEW is starting to rebuild that tag division back up, especially you got Pride and Powerful coming back. I think they focused a little bit too much on the trios titles recently, and it'll be nice if Aussie Open is going to stick around for a while. Like, that makes me have some faith in that tag division that had kind of slowly started to slip away from what it was when the company first started. And some of that was the trios title, and some of that was injuries. And but it'd be great to see those guys get in there and mix it up with FTR and the Bucks and Pride and Powerful. I mean, they're a great tag team. So like you said, they deserve all of the flowers. And I look forward to seeing more of them.
Oh, for sure. I'm a big fan of those guys, man. Everybody, please say hello to Faye from the Untitled Wrestling Podcast. Go subscribe today. And everybody, please keep Jay Love from the Untitled Wrestling Pod and Two Nations Under Ted, a Ted Lasso podcast. Please keep him in your thoughts today. He's got a family situation happening and things happening today for his dad. So everybody, please keep him in your thoughts. I'm sure he would greatly appreciate it. And I don't want to get too specific. It's his business, but everybody just kind of remember Jay, great fan of the show, great friend of the show. Love podcasting with the guy. He is truly a class act. Let's run down this card here, Chris. Jack Perry versus Hook for the FTW Championship. I'm going to ask you this. It's going to sound shallow, but I don't mean it to. Do you care about this match?
No, but they've done a lot of stuff that has made me not care about it. I think just as a match itself, it could turn out to be a really good match. I actually like the way Hook works in the ring. Jungle Boy, there's aspects about his ring work that I like as well. But it's just the Jungle Jack Perry, that the way they did the heel turn, they could, like, I think I even talked about, they should have just done it during the 4-way. If they were going to turn him heel like the very next night, why didn't they just do it during that 4-way match? And then they haven't done anything, honestly, to make you want to hate the guy or like the guy. He's kind of just nothing. I mean, I was joking around on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and I said, man, they should just cut his hair and have him come out to the 90210 theme song. Just do anything with the guy that's different than what they're doing now, because they just haven't given us a reason to care about him. That's the only problem with the match. I think the match itself will be pretty good, but yeah, it's just hard to care about the story at all.
You're 100% right, and I was okay if they turned him heel, but the reason fell flat with me as well, because I believe you could have fixed it. You could have fixed it real easy, in my opinion, and all you had to do was say, you know, I've seen the websites talk about how it's a good thing for Jungle Boy to be tagging with Hook, that it's a good thing for Jungle Boy because it helps Jungle Boy. How about this? It helps Hook. It ain't helping me. It's helping him. And then that, in my mind, could have been the impetus for a turn. But instead, the way he explained it, I'm like, yeah, I don't buy this. This doesn't resonate. But the other, in my opinion, would have been like, oh, I get it. The dude was taking too much of your spotlight. You thought that people were overlooking you. Anyway.
That would have been a great way to go. I mean, I thought that the way were building up MJF and the way that he was talking to Jungle Boy, that was going to be the turn during that 4-way. I think I had thrown that out there as the prediction, which would have been another good way if you wanted to turn the guy heel. Like he listened to MJF. He's along for the ride with MJF to become a top guy because he knows he can't do it by being the good guy. That was the other story you could have told. But what you laid out would have made a lot of sense because, obviously when I made that prediction, I didn't know they had this long storyline going with Adam Cole that maybe they had already had planned out.
And, I'm glad you mentioned that. Not for nothing, but when you have too many heel turns happening sort of at the same time, I think it's maybe less effective. So I think those things have to be done sparingly, honestly. I mean, yeah, we'll see what happens with it.
Yeah, I mean, you also would hope that the guy's a little over as a babyface before you turn him heel. I don't know that Jungle Boy has ever. I mean, I think people like Jungle Boy, but he's never really hit. He's not gotten there yet. I'm not saying it's never going to happen, but they haven't given us a whole lot of reason to care either way.
It's fair. That's a fair point. That's a really fair point. There was a kid that we had in our locker room at one point, this company I was working with, and he was worried because the crowd didn't seem to be responding too well to him. He was our champ and he was babyface. He was really worried. He was sweating it. For 2 or 3 weeks in a row. He's big time. He's, I don't know, boss. Might turn heel. And I'm like, dude, you're fine. It's the crowd. It's dog days of summer. People are tired. They're sweating. We don't exactly have a lot of AC in here. Don't sweat. Don't worry about it. But man, it gets in their heads, man, when they don't hear what they need to hear. It's legitimate. Like some guys can't get out of their own head, honestly, for a lot of this stuff. So yeah, I get it. I see it. Let's talk about FTR versus the Young Bucks tag team match for AW World Tag Team Championship. I'll just be blunt with you. Are FTR dropping the belts here? Did you hear me? Did I lose you?
Yeah, I lost you for just a second. You were you just went into the FTR match.
Okay. So what I asked was, do you think they're going to just drop the belts to the Young Bucks here?
I don't know. I don't think so, just because the Bucks are still tied into Omega still, right?
Yeah. We might be losing you here a little bit there, Chris. You're freezing on me a little. Oh, Chris done dropped out. Look, no worries, kids. He'll be back with us here shortly. I show good signal. Hopefully are you guys seeing me okay? There he is.
Yeah, the whole thing crashed for me for some reason. Yeah, I don't know that you need FTR to drop the titles here because I'm not sure that they've wrapped up the story that they're doing with Don Callis and Kenny Omega, and it seems like they're going to continue down that road for a little bit. Unless there's just something that we don't know. I mean, obviously there is the cash stuff that's happening outside of wrestling. So that would be potentially a reason to drop the titles. But then you could also make the point of, well, why are they even going to have them on this show?
I mean, and I see some of the guys here in the chat making that point as well. I mean, I don't know anything beyond that it was road rage, and I don't know, has the story been fleshed out since then, or is that all we know?
I mean, that we know that he was brought in and charged, right? But I mean, he's not been convicted of anything as of right now. So
sure. I mean,
I
and look,
I don't know.
I'm not taking it for the guy because he's a wrestler or because I enjoy AEW. So everybody, don't light your torches just yet. But what I will tell you is, we don't know the circumstances. For all we know, he cut someone off in traffic. The guy didn't like it. He chased him because people can be nuts. And maybe it's a road where Cash knows if he pulls off, the guy's going to follow him. Maybe he doesn't want a confrontation. Maybe he can't get away from the guy. Maybe the guy pursues. And then as a means to tell him to back off, he shows a gun. It's not a great thing to do. It's not a great idea. But if you're in fear for your safety, I don't know. I'm not an attorney. It's whatever. I don't know. I just think until we know everything, I don't think it's right to hang the guy out to dry just yet.
Right. And I mean, I don't think it would hurt them if they had to drop the titles, honestly, but I don't necessarily know that the Bucks are the team you'd want to put the titles on right now, just because they're involved with, kind of tied into another storyline. They could just wait and drop the titles they have another pay-per-view in like a week, right? So they could just drop it to a different team.
No kidding. Good point. Hikaru Shida versus Tony Storm versus Saraya versus Dr. Britt Baker, D&D. 4-way match with AW Women's World Championship. Who you got in this one?
I guess Shida. I don't know. I've had kind of low hopes and expectations for this match.
Yeah, I love the women's division. I always have. You could always make the case that they're not doing enough at any given time. I would agree with that. As we both said before, AEW is not the perfect company. I don't think there is a perfect pro wrestling company besides New Japan. Hey, look, I'm just telling you how I feel. New Japan. Look, New Japan's my happy place. I'm just being honest with everybody here. I can't help myself. But yeah, I don't know what they're going to do here. I can tell you for sure, Britt Baker is not the most popular person backstage. That is 100%, 100%. And that's all I'll tell you. But, I don't know how much of that affects what happens here or if any of it ever does. Do you think Saraya gets this belt by any chance?
Possibly. It would be a big win. I mean, if they wanted to give someone a hometown win, that would be a big one, right?
Very true.
And I mean, really, we're kind of in a waiting period till Jamie Hayter gets back, right? I think that's what has more hurt this kind of the story that they had going, and a little bit hurt the top end of the women's division is they, obviously they couldn't predict that Jamie Hayter was going to get hurt. I think they were really going to build to hurt Britt. But yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I'm like you. I think the match will be good, but I don't have a lot of expectations going in.
Well, they haven't even really gave us like the go home for that. I guess that's going to happen tonight on Rampage.
I guess so. That's a good point. Yeah. Tonight or tomorrow on Collision, I guess, right?
Yeah. Oh God, that's gonna be so tough for them when they're trying to wrap up storylines the night before a pay-per-view.
Yeah, because ooh, God, you could do anything tomorrow night, dude. Literally anything. Like, you could even do stuff that's out of continuity tomorrow night if you wanted to, because you've already got your card set. So tomorrow night will be an interesting show, I think. Darby Allin and Sting versus Swerve Strickland and Christian Cage. We know the AR Fox situation, dude. He had issues with travel with his passport. I don't know all the particulars of that, but I'll say this: if it's on his end, if his passport wasn't right, if it's something by his own hand, like maybe he didn't realize, I don't know. It kind of seems like shouldn't you have your documentation ready before you know you're going to leave the country? I don't know. That face turn felt terrible. I hate it. I thought he and Strickland looked effing great together. I was looking forward to seeing them work together for the next 6 months. Now it's all over. What do you think about that in this match as well?
Yeah, I don't necessarily like the face turn. I think there's other ways that you could have gotten AR Fox out of that match. Um, yeah, I'm kind of with you because I enjoyed them as a tag team, and I enjoyed kind of what they had going with the Nick Wayne storyline. I kind of wanted to see that continue down the road a little bit, but it should be a fun match, man. I'm looking forward to the match itself. I think putting Christian in that match adds a lot to it. It'll be fun to see Christian and Sting in the ring again for the first time since LOL TNA. So,
oh, that's good.
so yeah, I think it's going to be I think it'll be a pretty fun match. And yeah, it sucks about, I'm a big AR Fox fan, especially being, from the Atlanta area and have followed AR for a long time. So I was really happy to see him. Well, one, for Swerve to have something meaningful to do, and two, for them to have like a tag team. That match was great though. That the actual match up until the finish, AR Fox hit that one move on the outside where it's like I don't even know how to explain it. He does this like weird flip backwards. He's like jumping backwards and does a flip out to the floor. It's so weird when he does it, but it looks awesome. There's some cool spots in that match for sure.
It's the same thing I say about Commander and El Vikingo. They both do highly unnecessary things that would never happen in a real fight, but God, it's fun to watch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the only thing I can say. That crowd, when Sting comes out, put your earplugs in, because oh my God, they're going to go nuts for Sting. I mean, legend. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he got a big pop here in Duluth too. They were wrestling right like about 10 minutes from me. I didn't get to make it out to the show, but they were at the Gaslight. It used to be called the Gwinnett Arena, but they call it something else now. But anyways, it's like 10 minutes from my house, so that's where the show is at. So I actually expected a bigger pop for AR Fox based on what it was like when I saw him at GCW not that long ago. But the Sting pop was there, and I was like, yeah, that's kind of expected.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, the one at Wembley is going to be insane for Sting.
Oh yeah, because you got to ask yourself, Chris, how many more times did they get Sting in that country? You know what I mean?
He said he's retiring after this year, so if he does actually retire, this will probably be the last time.
Is this man? We're already at the top of the hour, but is this one of the best comebacks for a veteran that maybe we've ever seen? Top 5, maybe, especially his age.
Yeah, you would have to put it up there, right? I mean, do you throw Terry Funk, Sting? I'm trying to think of. I guess, could you consider HBK's comeback a comeback?
Well, it depends. If you talk about the comeback from back surgery, then I would say yes, or the back injury. Yeah. When he came back in the brown tights, yeah, I would say yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I personally would. That's a great question.
So those might be the top 3: Funk in ECW, Sting's current run, and Shawn Michaels when he came back from the back surgery.
Yeah. I mean, there's others. There's Danielson, there's Edge, there's Shibata. Yeah, it's there's others, man. But yeah, I think...
Danielson's had a pretty decent run as well. To me, they didn't have as big of a gap as Sting did. That's
fair. And plus, if we're talking age, then I'd say Funk and Sting would make the most sense. That makes sense. The Golden Elite, Kota Ibushi, Kenny Omega, and Hangman Adam Page versus Konosuke Takeshita and Bullet Club Gold. If you don't like Bullet Club Gold, you and I cannot be friends. I mean, Juice is effing great. Jay White, I'm sorry, Jay White's one of the best in the game. He really, truly is. What do you think about this match? Who goes over here?
I mean, hopefully Bullet Club Gold, but that would be what I would do. But yeah, it's kind of hard to say. You know what? I'm really surprised with Bullet Club. I actually am surprised that Juice, in a lot of ways, has kind of overshadowed Jay White, which I did not expect. Not that they both haven't been great, but Juice has just been kind of on a crazy run since he got in AEW as far as his promos, and that kind of took me by surprise. Not that either of those guys are anything less than great, but I thought that we were going to get more of like Switchblade as far as the promos and stuff go, and Juice has kind of overshadowed him a little bit in that area.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Juice is so much fun. It's crazy. We'll run down the rest of this card here, kids. Eddie Kingston, Orange Cassidy, Best Friends, and Penta El Zero versus Blackpool Combat Club of course, Mox, Claudio, Wheeler Yuta, Santana, Ortiz, Stadium Stampede match. Will Ospreay with Don Callis versus Chris Jericho. CM Punk versus Samoa Joe for the real World's Championship. House of Black, Malachi Black, Buddy Matthews, and Brody King versus Billy Gunn and the Acclaimed. What makes me think Billy Gunn's going to turn on the Acclaimed here?
I don't. Maybe, but like, what does that heel turn do? What does that do? Put him back with his actual sons, or I mean, he's not going to join House of Black.
I was going to say he dyes his hair black and he comes out painted, doesn't talk anymore, and I might be here for that. That might be fun.
I mean, he may only be being added to this. I mean, obviously that's kind of where they built the story, but I was assuming that he's there to take the fall.
Oh yeah, I assume so. Yeah. I don't know, dude. Should they win the belts? You think that's a bad move with this, considering the number of great trios teams we have in that company already?
No, I mean, it might be like a nice send off for Billy Gunn if he's not going to be around for much longer. I wouldn't really have a big problem with it because you can always, like I said, you can always flip them back. It's not like the trios title has this crazy lineage or anything.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, I'm interested. I'm interested to see what they do here. I love House of Black. I love everything about them. I love everything they do. I don't know. I think there's so many great trios teams there. I don't know if it'd be worth to change the belts like that. I actually thought the Acclaim losing the World Tag Belts was too soon, even though I was okay with Gun Club getting them because I like those guys a lot. But I still think maybe it was too soon for that. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of jaded because I'm not as big on like trios tag matches as I am just their normal tag team division, and I kind of wish that the focus was more on just their standard tag division. But I see your point. There are a lot of trios teams that they have there, and switching the belt, unless they could leave it on the Acclaimed for a while if they wanted to. I mean, you would assume that they eventually want to push Malachi Black in the singles division, right?
Yeah, you would think so. I mean, it's they've got so many. Their locker room is just sick with talent. They do not have an issue with not having enough hands. And not only not enough hands, but enough hands who could, if you try to count right now, Chris, the number of guys that have that legitimately could win the world title today and it'd be real, like serious. I think you're upwards of 10, maybe more than 10 guys that you wouldn't go, oh, come on. Do you know what I mean? That's insane amount of talent in that company.
Well, you got like 3 that are just in the Blackpool Combat Club. They could be heavyweight champions just in one group.
In one group.
Yeah, you think Claudio, Brian Danielson, and John Moxley.
That's fair.
And then you throw in like you got Omega. I think there's 10 people you could make a case that you could, if you push them the right way, you could put them at the top of your company.
Yeah, dude, there's no doubt about it. It's crazy how much talent they have. And to anybody saying they are signing too many people, please stop. It's an embarrassment of riches to have that much talent in one company at one time. That's how I feel. So
yeah, they're gonna be able to afford it after this Wembley show when you factor in all of these ticket sales plus the merch that they're gonna sell at this thing. They'll be set up pretty nice for a little while.
And not for nothing, Chris, but anyone that maybe is on the fence about endorsing or promoting or using pro wrestling as a media partner or a promotional partner, once they get a load of what this company did with as young as they are, I think it's a great selling point for them, you know?
Yeah. And they have 7 hours of TV now. Well, if you factor in the Ring of Honor show, but they added an additional show. So they're going to need, if that was their plan all along, is to end up with 3 shows, they probably need all the guys that they have.
Totally agree. Well, kids, we are well past the top of the hour. Usually we open the floor at the end. I'll open the floor at the end for Ray. Ray's got his typical paragraph of a question ready. I'm sure he's just got to hit the enter button and get that sucker up here. Once he does, we'll take it. And kids, apologies for not having an extended open floor today. Look, there we go. I told you. All right, it's a big one. It always is. All right, Chris, we're going to let you go first. MOP or Lost Boys, and part 2, Big Pun or 2-pack. And if Adam Cole came to your house and invited you and your family to a coffee expo in which you try various coffees from around the world, plus get a nice t-shirt and hat, and said you can bring a friend, could I join? And later wanted to get veggie chili and pecan pie, could I join as well? This is for both of you.
I'm going to go with Lost Boys and Big Pun. I'm a huge Big Pun fan. I do like Tupac as well, but if I had to pick one CD between the two that I could listen to, it'd be probably Pun. And then, yes, of course, Ray Dean. And next time I make it up to that area to see a Devils game, we'll have to get together and have some dinner or something.
Ray said he'd buy your dinner. He bought mine. He said he'll buy your dinner. I'm volunteering him. He may not like that. I think I'm with you on everything, but I do like Tupac quite a bit. So I may have to go Tupac on that one. But yes, Ray, of course. Anything for you, my friend. All right, let's take one more. Robbie says, here's this. Robbie likes to throw real names at you and see if you know who the guys are. Barbara Blank, Aaron Aurelano, and Brian Heffron. Brian Heffron's Big Meanie, isn't it? I think.
I am really bad at this because I just don't keep up with wrestlers' real names. Is Barbara Blank Deborah McMahon? Deborah McMichaels? I honestly don't know. I just don't keep up unless they're like Paul Levesque or someone like that. I have a hard time keeping up with wrestling names.
Robbie, go ahead and hit us with the answers there, my friend. I never cheat and Google. Kelly, Mil Mascaras, and Blue Meanie. Well done.
I watched it was kind of some terrible footage, but a Terry Funk Mil Mascaras match this week that was surprisingly good. Just because it seems like such a weird mesh of styles.
It is. What's the big catchphrase with Mil was no yob? No yob. Isn't that what's his name said for years? Is that Mil wouldn't put anybody over? He never lost.
Well, Terry talks about it in his book that he loved working with Mil because it helped the Amarillo territory, and he didn't mind taking a loss if it was helping his territory because it would bring in the Hispanic crowds into his territory. So I had to go look up the match after listening back to some of these Terry Funk stories, and good stuff.
There again, as we said earlier with Terry, dude, smart, did what was best for business, and it was never really about him. It was about the business, which in my opinion is the way it should be. All right, kids, that's it for us. Before we get out of here, Chris, let the good people out there know where they can find you on socials and with your show as well.
If you want to hit me on, I guess it's X now. It's at Chris R. Patton. On Facebook, it's Christopher.R.Patton. And the weekly podcast to do with my good friend Dane Alves is Wrestling Geeks Alliance. Tomorrow we'll be going into a big deep dive of Terry Funk's career and going into some of our favorite matches, and then obviously going over our predictions for the AEW show. So you can hit that anywhere you see Tom's stuff. Our stuff will be there as well. All those same platforms.
There you go. Chris, thank you, my friend, for coming on today. Hang loose for a bit for me, but I appreciate it. And we'll have you on the 6. We're going to set up that 6M. I promise you. We'll get that thing going. But thanks again for coming on today, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a great time, and hopefully next time we do one of these, it doesn't have to start off so somber.
Same. I totally agree. Thanks again, dude. We'll talk soon.
Thanks.
All right, kids, that was CRP, as I call him, Christopher Ray Patton. Please, kids, go check out his show. Check him out on socials. I'm sure he'd appreciate it. Before I get out of here, remember, Two Nations Under Ted, a Ted Lasso podcast, and Tom Clark's 6M podcast. Go give us follows. We'll follow you back. Subscribe and download. I promise you'll get something out of it. As we said about the wrestling companies, there's something that you'll like. I promise you, even if it's just one episode. Plus, how can you not like all this? Nah, I'm kidding. All right, kids, that's all I got for you. I appreciate you very much. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in today. Do me a favor, guys. Go out there and have the best weekend ever. Please stay safe. Enjoy yourselves. And we will talk very soon. We'll see you next week. Thanks, kids. Have a great one.